what does manifesting mean? It means literally creating physical reality out of nothing, out of energy, really, out of source energy. And you have the ability to do this because you are part of source, the creator that created this universe and everything in it. You are part of that. So you have the ability to create the universe and everything in it, including your own life. Now, obviously, individually, we don't have as much power as Source does. We're all included within Source, and Source also has its own core personality, consciousness, identity. But we have plenty enough power to create the physical reality of our life. How do I know this? I learned about it in the afterlife. I went through the afterlife in kind of a learning mode. I started out thinking like a human and ended up thinking like Source. Early, while I was in the human phase of my experience, or when I was still perceiving things from a human perspective, I didn't realize I died, so I wasn't thinking in those terms, but I was trying to figure out what had happened to me. And while I'm in the afterlife, I'm getting, all these wonderful spiritual powers and abilities, and I'm going, wow, isn't that neat, isn't that neat, and having a good old time. And then all of a sudden, I can see my body down in the mammography room. I'm up in the light, and I can see through the back of my head that this body is sitting down there, arms on the arms of the chair, head up, totally blank. And after perceiving that for a little while, I thought, nah, I couldn't be dead. You always go through a tunnel before, you go into the light, and boom, I'm in a tunnel. But I knew I wasn't in a tunnel. I knew I was already in the light. But I'm in this dank, dark earth tunnel that had like maybe a railroad track or something over the top of it, and had a dirt floor, maybe some concrete. And it wasn't big enough like to get a car through, or not today's kind of cars, but maybe when an old model car. So it was a really old tunnel, like maybe from the 1920s or 30s or something, I don't know. And it smelled moldy and musty and earth-like. And I thought, well, isn't this just typical Danison, It's like I've read stories since then that people who go into the light through a tunnel will have these glorious angels and their family members, and I get dirt. But I know I'm not in a tunnel. I know I'm in the light, because I've been in the light for a long time. So I went, oh, I'm going to try another experiment. I've also heard people call it, and I wasn't willing to use the word afterlife or heaven, because I wasn't really sure I believed I was dead. I've heard people call it this beautiful meadow. And all of a sudden, boom, I'm in a beautiful meadow. Birds chirping, sun shining, flowers everywhere, purple haze mountains in the background. It reminded me a little bit of the scene in Robin Williams' movie, What Dreams May Come?
Dreams May Come.
Where he's like running through this meadow made of paint. Well, mine wasn't made of paint. It was just like this. I mean, it was earth. So I go, I'm going to try this one more time. So the third time I thought, well, I just passed out and I hallucinated all this that's been happening to me, and I'm really back in the hospital on my way over to surgery. Boom, I'm back in the hospital, and I'm walking, got my hospital gown on, I'm walking with a nurse beside me down a hallway with this purple stripe painted along the side, and I knew that if we keep following the purple stripe, we'd end up the surgical rooms. So we're walking down the hallway. I could feel my feet on the floor. I could feel the weight of my body moving. I could smell the perfume of the nurse beside me and the hospital smells around me. I could feel her presence. It was solid. It was real. It was just as real as anything we're experiencing right now. But I knew it wasn't. And the thought came into my mind, it's not fooling me. Fooling me? Why would Earth fool me? And the next thought that came into my mind was manifesting. And I realized that we manifest, and that was the word given to me, so that's the only word I know how to use, what humans perceive as physical reality. And we do it instantly in the afterlife. All I had to do was think tunnel, and I was in one. All I had to do was think meadow, and I was in one. All I had to do was think hospital, and I was in one. I knew that we manifest Earth, what we experience on Earth. I didn't know how. But then I'm rolling along. After I had that manifesting experience, I saw 5 lights and then 5 beings of light, and then I went on into the next phase of my afterlife experience. After, I'm going to summarize here, after I met the 5 beings of light and had a life review, and I got back all my memories of all my other lifetimes and access to what I call universal knowledge. And I call it universal knowledge because it's open to everybody. It's everything that could possibly be known in the world, in the universe. It's everything the source knows or will know through the passage of time. Somewhere sliced in that download of universal knowledge, I got this big library of information about manifesting. And again, that word was used, manifesting. And there weren't probably 10 or 12 words during my whole experience that were in English. We don't use words in the afterlife. In our spiritual form, everything's telepathic. So I thought it was pretty important that a word was used, so I remembered it. And what I was given was this huge load of information about how and why we manifest and the purpose of it. And it was very clear to me, made very clear to me, that what we experience as life on Earth would be like, to a spiritual being, what dreaming is like to a human being. It isn't real. And I mean, it was impressed upon me over and over again. Human life is not real to a spiritual being. Now, when you're in it, it seems totally real. And it seems totally real to me now, back here. But once you leave it and you look back on it, you realize it wasn't real. And I was dumbfounded that I could ever have possibly thought that my human life was real. I mean, I just thought, that was the stupidest thing going. How could what did it take to convince me that that was real? Because I was so positive in the afterlife that it wasn't. We take part of our spiritual energy and kind of put it to sleep. And while it's asleep, it has this dream of being in a human being. That's kind of the simplest way I can put it. That's not actually what's going on. What's going on, I found out later when I merged into Source and was able to see through Source's eyes and know things from its perspective. And from Source's perspective, there's only one being in this universe, what I call Source. It didn't have a name. It was the source of everything, so I thought, okay, I'll call it Source. That one entity, that one consciousness, can imagine entities different from itself. It can imagine character traits different than its own. And it wanted to experience those. So what it did was create imaginary characters. Just like in human life we create imaginary characters in books and movies and plays and virtual reality games and all kinds of creative endeavors. So Source created these characters in its mind with different personality traits. Some of them are just like Source's. Some of them are completely different than Source. And they're all different from one another. And there are zillions and zillions and zillions of these characters within Source. And that's what each of us is. We're a character within the mind of Source. And as those characters, I call those characters light beings. Because when you see them in the afterlife, they look like a being made out of light. Okay? We are each of those characters. And because we are Source, we have the same ability the Source does to create characters that we enter into, like human beings. And trees and plants and rocks and anything else we want to.